Hey, welcome to another week of Bible in a Year. I'm excited to talk about where we've been reading, where we're going in the next week, and what God has been teaching us. So let's talk about the Old Testament reading that we just did this past week, Judges 13 through 1 Samuel chapter 2. And the book of Judges ends with these words, this last sentence to the book of Judges. It says, "In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." All right, so after a whole book of some really terrible stories. I mean, this is a book that contains some of the most horrific and painful stories in the entire Bible. And at the end of it, that is the summary conclusion. That there was no solid moral standard, and there was no heroic, singular moral leader in the kingdom of Israel. Instead, everybody did what they thought was right instead of following what God said was right. Of course, we have some moments where people are doing the right thing, but we have so many moments when people are doing the wrong thing. And actually, as we mentioned last time, we get to the end of the book of Judges and we see what amounts to a civil war. We see lots of death. We see some terrible and tragic things happen. It's a sad place that we find ourselves. And then we step into the book of Ruth, which happens during the very same time period. We find out in the first couple of verses, this is happening at the same time as the Judges. And yet this is the ray of sunshine, right? This is the glimmer of hope during the same period of time. We hear the story of simple faithfulness, simple obedience, especially by a woman named Ruth. Okay, it's a short story, but a powerful story. It's a story seeing faithfulness, seeing obedience. It's sort of simple. It's rural. It's in the farm. It's out in the field. It's one of those stories that unless it was recorded carefully, you wouldn't hear about it, right? It's everyday faithfulness and obedience. And yet, one of the amazing, beautiful things is at the end of the book of Ruth, we read the story that this is, of course, the line, the genealogy of David, King David, which we also know is the line of the Messiah, King Jesus, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And so it's an amazing and beautiful story that just reminds us of the faithfulness and some of the shining moments, things that can happen in the midst of pain and terrible times. So Ruth and Boaz are the great examples of that faithfulness and obedience. We also see develop the idea of a redeemer. Boaz becomes a redeemer, one who purchases, one who restores, right? He redeems or restores Ruth. As well as the property of her family, of her husband, of her father-in-law. We see Boaz come in and take on that role for her and for her passed away husband. And so he plays that role of redeemer, of restorer, of providing security and an inheritance for her and for her descendants. And it points us forward, of course, to Jesus, who, of course, also pays for us. Restores us and secures for us eternal future and blessing with God. And then we got into the book of 1 Samuel. After we come out of Judges, that's the context we're coming from. God raises up now a prophet, or we could see him as the final judge. Eli, the priest, is leading and ruling in Israel, and yet we see that he is a fallen, broken man. His sons are going in the wrong direction, and so God raises up Samuel to take his place and to lead Israel. And God, again, as he's done already so many times in the Old Testament, works through a woman who is in pain, a woman who's experiencing infertility, the pain of that, and God chooses her and uses her to bring about one of his great heroes in the story of God's redemption of his people. So an amazing thing that we see already going on in the book of 1 Samuel. In the New Testament, we read Luke chapter 15 through 19. We saw Jesus do more teaching. We saw Jesus do some more healing. And we ended on Palm Sunday, Jesus coming into Jerusalem, being welcomed as a hero and as a king. But of course, we know that the week isn't going to end that way. So as we look ahead at the coming week, we're going to get into 1 Samuel 3 through 17 and then Luke 20 through 22. We're going to read in 1 Samuel a story about the Ark of the Covenant. If you remember that from the Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is that Ark. We're going to see it taken from Israel. We're going to see it captured by the Philistines. And then we're going to see what happens when God's presence is among some people who don't honor him, who don't fear him, who don't worship him. Then we're going to see the ark eventually returned. We're going to see Israel demand a king, which of course is going to lead into the story of the kings throughout the rest of the Old Testament, but we're going to see that foundationally, Israel wants the wrong thing. If you pay close attention in the chapter to what they say, we want to be like all the other nations. That's why we want a king. And ultimately, God is going to tell Samuel, hey, they're not rejecting you, they're actually rejecting me, the God of the universe, as their king. They want a human king because they want to be like all the other nations. So God's going to work good out of it, his perfect plan, and yet it's actually out of a wrong heart, a poor desire that king's going to come out. Then we're going to see the rise and quickly the fall of King Saul, the first king, and then we're going to see the beginning rise of King David, who of course is the beautiful picture of a good king. Still a fallen, broken man, as we're going to find out, but a picture of a good king. Then we're going to turn the page into the New Testament, and as we continue in the book of Luke, we're going to see the one true, perfect king headed towards the cross. I think it's powerful to think about King Jesus in contrast to King Saul and King David that we're reading about in the Old Testament. This is the one true, perfect king. No flaws, no errors. And what do people do with him? They send him to the cross. Right? With Saul, they look at him and they say, this guy's tall, this guy's strong, let's put him in charge and let's honor him. With David, eventually people come to his side and they support and encourage him. But with Jesus, the one true, perfect king, they reject him. They kill him. And so we'll see Jesus continue to head towards the cross. So as we reflect on what God's been teaching us in these passages, I want to highlight again the book of Ruth. I think it highlights for us that we should not underestimate the power of simple obedience. It's easy to look and to say, if I want my life to mean something, I've got to be sort of heroic. I've got to maybe be famous. I've got to be at the top of my game. I've got to be well known or something like that. And yet the Bible gives us a very different picture. It shows the story of Ruth, of Boaz, simple, out in the country, out in the field, just obeying God. They are just being kind. They're being loving. They're being faithful. They say, I want to be faithful and true to my promises. I want to be faithful and true to God. I want to be faithful and true to my mother-in-law in the case of Ruth. For Boaz, I want to be faithful and true to this woman who is a part of the clan that I'm a part of, and I want to do right by her. Doing these simple steps of, hey, I just want to obey God. The Lord does so much with that. And so you and I can learn from that so much that it's not all about the fame. It's not all about the glory. It's about giving the glory to God. It's about being simply obedient to him and his word. And you never know what the Lord's going to do with that. Well, hey, thanks for spending some time with us. We'll see you next week. Have a great week.